As long as I meet people's needs, I've got a source of income and I can buy my freedom. Hi, I'm Dr. John Demartini. I'd like to spend just a moment to share with you a story about how to buy your own freedom in life. And it goes back to when I was 9 years old, back in 1963. That summer, I was at home and I had responsibilities during the day and I played baseball through the day. But one day I asked my dad, Dad, I want to be able to earn some money to be able to buy a baseball and a glove and a bat so I can play baseball with the newest equipment. And he said, well, fantastic. I said, do you have anything I can do that can earn some money? He said, well, have you mowed the yard? Yes, sir. Have you edged the sidewalk? Yes, sir. Have you swept the garage and cleaned the garage? Yes, sir. Have you trimmed the hedges? Yes, sir. Have you weeded the flower beds? Yes, sir. Have you tightened up the shale on the side of the house? Yes, sir. You cleaned the gutters? Yes, sir. Have you cleaned my shoes and polished my shoes? Yes, sir. And is your room clean? Yes, sir. He said, son, I don't have anything other than those things that need to be done. And if there's no other need for that, if you want to earn money, you're going to have to go to the neighbors and see if you can find somebody that you can serve there and fill some of those needs, because there's nothing I have needing. I went, oh. So I had this expectation that he was going to be able to give me an opportunity to earn money, but it turned out that I had to go to the neighbors. So I went up and down the street and I saw the Evans house, which is 2 doors down, and their yard was a bit unruly. It hadn't been mowed in a while and the hedges were kind of unruly. And so I decided to go up to the door and I asked Mrs. Evans, is there any way that you would like to have your yard manicured and trimmed and mowed and the hedges cleaned and trimmed? And she looked at me and she said, well, yes, how much? And I didn't think in advance about what to charge, so I just threw a number out there and probably underballed it, but she said, well, that sounds fair to me. When would you like to do that? And I said, I can do that right now. And so I went to work. I went back to my garage. I got the hedge clippers, I got the mower, the edge, everything. And I walked over there with it and I started doing the yard. And I spent most of the afternoon doing it. I clipped the hedges, I weeded, I did everything. When I got through, she paid me and I was pretty inspired. And I went out the next day and I went out and bought me my glove, my baseball, my bat. And what was interesting is a day or so later, my dad said, I see you have a new baseball glove and a new baseball bat. Where did you get that? I said, well, I did what you said. I went to the neighbors and I asked how I could be of service. And then I did the services and they paid me and I went out and bought the things. And he said, well, that's fantastic. He said, what equipment did you use? And I said, well, I used the equipment that's in the garage. He said, well, son, I have to explain something to you. When you use that equipment, you used up gasoline and you depreciated the equipment. I have to charge you for that. I went, oh, well, how much? He says, well, let's see what you did. Tell me what all you did. And I said, this amount. And he said, well, that's going to end up being $7.50 for all the use of the equipment and the gasoline. And I said, well, I don't have that. And he says, well, that'll teach you not to spend money that's not yours. You have to pay for all that. And so he worked out an arrangement where if I continued to do more yards, I had to back pay him what I owed him, and then I had to pay him a percentage of it, which eroded the potential margin that I had. But I still thought, well, this is still better than not having anything. So I started doing yards, but my money was a little bit less. It's like paying taxes. You don't make quite as much on it. I didn't have to make enough money to pay taxes in those days, but at least I had the opportunity to have cost and learn about it. Well, then what happened is I was mowing this yard and working very hard, and this young boy drove by on a bicycle. And I saw him there and I thought, wow, I could get this guy to maybe push this lawnmower. They didn't have these automated mowers in those days. And so in the process of doing it, I talked him into doing it. I told him I'd pay him 50 cents. 50 cents was a decent fee for a young kid. So I ended up getting 3 kids to help me with the yards. And then within about a week or so later, I realized I could be selling while these kids are doing some of this if I trained them properly. And then I'd get 3 groups of 3 kids, 9 employees working for me when I was 9. And I ended up getting the Zubrods and the Malas equipment in addition to my dad's. I think they figured out what the fees were for my dad and they charged me the same amount. And what was interesting is I now had 3 crews out there doing the yards in the neighborhood and extending out further than just walking distance in some cases. And I started making money. And when I actually added it all up, after paying my dad, paying for the gas, paying for all the young boys, I ended up one day making $45 US, which in 1963 would probably be equivalent to almost $800 today, which is darn good money. But with that, my dad saw that I was doing that, and he said, you're doing great. You're making money. You're being a little entrepreneur. But at the same time, you're not saving any of it. You're spending your money. And I went, oh. And I said, so what do you, every time he talks to me, it seemed like it was costing me money. So he bought me a coin collection set and a piggy bank, which I started putting coins into these little collecting systems. And I started to put the coins extra into the piggy bank. And it was a large piggy bank, a very heavy one. Anyway, this is 1963. And then when I started doing that, he was proud of that. He says, I'm really inspired that you're saving your money. You're actually setting aside some of that portion, and you're doing this, and you're helping the community, and you're making money, and you're knowing what it's like to be a little entrepreneur. He said, but I want to teach you one more thing. And now the first time he taught me, it cost me. The second time, it enhanced me because I was saving, but it kind of cost what I could spend immediately because he's trying to make me think long term. And this time he said, well, I want you to know what it's like to actually buy your freedom. And I'm sitting there, paused for a second, wondering what that is. And he says, from now on, you're going to be paying for clothing, food, and rent at $7.50 a week. But in the process of doing it, you're going to buy your freedom to go anywhere you want to go on that new bicycle you just bought. You can go anywhere you go as long as you're home at 9 o'clock at night. That's all you have the responsibility is you must be home at 9 o'clock each night. I went, okay, that's cool. So I started paying him. And I got on my bicycle and I started riding 35 miles. What I did, I'd get on my bicycle, I'd ride as fast as I could in a direction. Halfway through the day, I'd turn around and I'd come back. And then I'd race home to get home by 9 o'clock. And I'd bring a little sandwich with me, or I'd buy a sandwich. And I was exploring and going differences in different directions on different days. By the time I was 12, because I loved the traveling mechanism, I started hopping trains to different locations. That seemed more adventurous. Hopping trains was kind of cool at the time. And then I started hitchhiking by the time I was 13. And by the time I was 14, I hitchhiked across from Houston, Texas, all the way to Los Angeles and all the way down into Mexico and back into Texas. So I did about 6,000 miles of hitchhiking. And I've been on the go ever since, but I've had a lot of freedom. And my dad, what he gave me, one of the great lessons he gave me, he says, you have freedom to the degree that you serve people. And as long as you're willing to serve people and have a source of income, you can buy your freedom and go pretty well and do whatever you want to do. Well, I've been following that principle ever since. And what's interesting, the thing that's most inspiring to me, is in my office on the 52nd floor of a tall building in Houston called Williams Tower, to my right in a cadenza, if I open up that drawer, the bottom drawer, the original piggy bank from 1963 still sits there with the original coins, because my dad never gave me the combination or any way of opening the piggy bank. So I've never been able to open the piggy bank. I've got the original coins. It's probably worth a fortune now in coin collection, but I kept it there as a metaphor to keep thinking long-term to make sure you save and invest your money. And I'm very grateful for my dad for his lessons that he gave me. It taught me to be an entrepreneur. It made me realize that there's no limit on what I can have in life, as well as I'm willing to go serve people. As long as I meet people's needs, I've got a source of income and I can buy my freedom. So I just wanted to share that story with you because I really believe that my dad gave me the freedom, and I've been traveling ever since, as you know, and I get to go all over the world today. And I believe that that's because my dad gave me a great lesson that if I go out and serve people, I get to buy my freedom. So that's my message today. And I just think that that's a good reminder for all of us to start our life that way. If we do, then there's no limits on what we're capable of doing and how we can live. Thank you for joining me for this presentation today. If you found value out of the presentation, please go below and please share your comments. We certainly appreciate that feedback. And be sure to subscribe and hit the notification icons. That way I can bring more content to you and share more to help you maximize your life. I look forward to our next presentation. Thank you so much for joining.